G'day and welcome to episode 2 of the DRZ tracker build. Since I last spoke to you guys, I've had it on camera. I have managed to get the headlight fairing and the front fender off the bike. That was achieved rather easily with a little bit of WD-40 and some persuasion from my favourite tool. But today's goal, we're going to set probably what for me is one of the more important parts of the build that really sort of sets how everything else is going to look, and that's getting this here tank to fit. So if you're looking for one, I'll put a link in the description below, but this is a this is a CG125 style tank, fresh from eBay, nice and cheap as all my parts always are. I should mention, for this build I actually tried to go as many local parts to support some local businesses as I could. Unfortunately, tanks were in pretty short supply and my local wreckers really didn't have anything at a decent price, so I ended up on this one. It's actually pretty decent build quality. The only issue I know I have, well, aside from fitting it, is that the fuel petcock or fuel tap that comes on it has too small of an outlet for the DRZ carby. So it needs a 7mm fuel pipe. This thing only has, the fuel tap that came with it only has a 5mm, 4mm, something like that. Anyway, it isn't an ideal fit. I've chewed through, I've ordered 3 so far, fuel taps. None of them have been correct. They either haven't fitted the tank or haven't been big enough. But the one that's on the way is for a Harley, and hopefully that fits. So we'll find that out later in the week. Hopefully after the tank's fitted, so it could be a bit of fun. Otherwise I'll just have to rig up something dodgy. Now, for fitting this tank, I kind of locked it in that without measuring a thing. It does fit over my chassis. The issue I've got is that to get it sitting nice and level and sort of how I want to, it's sort of got that British front teeth look where it's just got this dirty big gap at the front, and that really bugs me. So, what I'm going to have to do is make some clearance around the twin radiators on the DRZ. Likely what I'll do is I'll just take them off for today, or at least lower them down. So that I can get the tank fitting nice and snug. We'll make some new mounts so that it holds at the front, and make a new mount for the rear. And we'll get that all situated, and then we can work out what we're going to do with the radiators. I don't know if I'm going to have to put some custom lines in there and space them out a bit further, which I don't really like the idea of so much, or really I don't know. I've probably got about 20 different ideas that I've chewed through lately, but it's a future Shane problem, let's be honest. What we want to do is get this tank fitted so we can start seeing what this bike will look like. So, without any further ado, let's get building and do some stuff. Now, as I alluded to earlier, the first steps we've got here are that we'll take off the shrouds around the radiators, remove the bolts that hold them in place, and just see where they naturally hang, in the hope that we can squeeze this tank in around it and get an idea of how it should mount. Holy Jesus. Now, a little something that I was unaware of on this bike and has been driving me absolutely mental trying to work out was the exact model. So in the DRZs, when they came out, there was sort of 3 models, the E, the S and the SM or M. The E sort of more dirt bikey, or sorry, strictly dirt bikey. They weren't usually able to be road registered in Australia. The S was a road registrable version, came with all the lights and the stuff, and the M is a supermoto version, or SM, whatever they call it. Some guru will correct me, I'm sure. I couldn't find the little lovely plate that's hidden up here with all the fairings on to see exactly which model I had. I'd assumed that I had an S because road registered fairings, all the works, but there were just things that didn't line up. There's gurus all over the internet that pop up and they'll tell you which one it is and which one it isn't based off of what they can see on the bike, but honestly I found as much stuff that shows it's an S as what shows it's an E. But plaque on the front says that I've got a road registered E, which is great news for me because there's more parts available for them, makes life a little bit easier. And yeah, that's it. So good news, I guess. Alrighty, now my 2 radiators just flopping about in the wind. So next up we can hopefully squeeze the tank down the sides and start working on some mounting points for it. Now real quickly, when it comes to the actual mounting points, the inside of the tank, which just so happened to handily be in reach, has these little U-mounts for your standard rubber road bike style mounts. I've got a little bit of rubber and plastic that I cut up from some old shock bushers off of some cars that I can use to put a bolt through and actually make the mount. The big question for me at the moment is really going to come down to what I want to do, whether I either want to weld a stud onto the frame of the bike. Look, as a welder, I make a pretty good grinder, so I'm kind of tempted to try and avoid that as much as I can. If not, I've got plenty of metal strapping around and a spare mount from where the old tank used to mount, so I could run up. Why don't we try and up from here over the top of the hoop and back down, and then put the mounts on that. That'd mean that the tank would be a bit easier to move around position again once I try and get it into its final position. It should still be fairly secure. I'd probably test it a bit more and work out if there's any other mounts I can grab or what I can do there. Or worst case, I can always just get some self-tappers and drill some shit in, but prefer not to do that. It's a bit rough even for me. Let's try and get this tank to fit flat this time. Alright, nice and loose. Thought this might be the case. There's next to no movement inside the coolant lines themselves, or from the coolant lines themselves. So I don't quite have the clearance to get the front corners of this tank through. So it looks like we're going to have to drain these radiators and remove them all together and work out how to fit them back on once the tank's on and done around the tank. I do have to be careful, of course, that my handlebars don't hit it. Luckily, because I'm up on the stand, I should be okay. I might be doing stem bearings too. Alright. So, in theory, I just pop this one and she'll leak all its coolant out. That legit just peed all over me. Now, for those of you who are playing along at home, if you've got to get some coolant hoses off, obviously first you've got to undo the hose clamp. The next thing you want to do is break the sort of sticky seal that forms between the rubber and the steel itself, or alloy in this case. So you just get a set of pliers. You don't want to crush it or hold it too firmly, you just want to grip it and twist it so that the silicone starts to move over the steel, and that'll mean that it'll slide out. If you don't break that bit of stickiness, you find yourself just struggling and tearing up pipes for no reason at all. Alrighty, so now it's time to get this tank back onto the bike, or get it on the bike for the first time. So my next problem is that my oil feed line, that obviously you've got an oil filler on the frame, most dirt bikes sort of do this, runs down off the side of the stem right here and sits right where I want my tank to sit. Not sure what to do here. Alright, I'm not super unhappy with this, but I am super tired. So, I'm going to go through, we might cut for a little bit. I'm going to pull both these radiators off so they're completely out of the way, work out anything else that's in the way, and then come back so that we can actually have a proper think about this and make sure I get this mounting dead on perfect. Alrighty. So this is it. I managed to get it sitting nice. I actually kind of really like the angle and the line that that creates. Remembering that the seat's going to come up just a bit, so it should allow the seat to sort of flow on and keep that nice flat line along the bottom of the bike. I do, of course, still have to bump this up a little bit because it's just sitting on the stem. Clears the handlebars ever so nicely. I do, of course, now have the later problem of working out how to remount and where to mount these radiators, but I am teetering on the fence of just going a large single radiator and working out how to mount that somewhere. Or I might try and creatively mount the other radiators, but it does mean all new custom hoses and that sort of stuff. To get this on, I did have to remove my oil feed line, which I'll have to sort that out. There's another hard line that runs down the front. I've got to trace that, work out what it is and where it goes. But what we will do is what I will do, you guys just get to watch. I will be working out roughly where the mount itself needs to go. So I am going to make the hoop just to start with out of some strapping. So I'll take you through, show you how we make that nice and quickly, and then hopefully we can make a rear bolt hole, call it a day on the tank. So let's get to it. This bike might as well be made in Switzerland. It is that difficult. I swear it is part of an IKEA catalogue. Now, gave up on the sort of saddle design that I had with bending a bit of steel or alley to go across the top and back down and bolt to existing bolts. Wasn't going to work because I don't have the clearance. The tank is too narrow where the mounts sit, and I'd had to bend a bit that goes in and around this oil fill and everything else, and it's just a real pain in the butt. Other than that, I didn't really like the idea of just having straight brackets coming off the side. Main reason for that being that it doesn't really have much to stop it moving. So what I settled on was drilled a nice hole in the frame here. It's only 6mm. I've got to still clean it up and anesthese it, and probably got some metal shavings in the chassis, but it's going to be a long while before that really causes too much of an issue with the bike. And what I'm going to do, I've got to run down the hardware store, get a longer bolt, so I need about a 70mm bolt. Cut up this here sway bar, I think it's a sway bar bushing or a subframe bushing off a Patrol to sit over the washers, and that'll hold the tank. It'll slide in just like a road bike seat does, road bike tank does, and should hold it nice and securely with the dirty big bolt running across the back here. So the reason I sort of toyed around with this for so long, and I mean I've spent hours measuring this thing, taking the tank on and off, on and off, on and off, trying to work it out, is that obviously got a big can of flammable juice on top. Those dinosaur bones are not friendly when they're introduced to things like spark and fire, which sits directly below it. So obviously want to make this as safe as I can, especially if I had something like a front end collision. I want to know that the tank will behave the way it should. And on top of that, when I go off-roading, I want to know the tank isn't going to fall off and end up back on the track somewhere and I'm stuck siphoning fuel out of a Coke bottle or something crazy like that. Yes, I have done that before. It's not fun. But that is the story. You guys are here to watch me do stuff. So I'm going to run down the hardware. I'm not going to take you long for that. And when I get back, we will finish off the front mount, start on the rear mount, drop the tank on, and we'll be able to look at what it's going to start. It'll start looking like an actual tracker and not just a bare chassis bike. I really hate the look of bikes in their bare form. It just takes away from everything. Had the same issues with the Hayabusa when I pulled its tanks and stuff off. It just looks ugly. But I digress and I just keep talking. So off to the hardware store and I'll be back in a minute. So tank's on, looks great. I'm really happy with it. Do have a few little notes to make though. So actually first off, I managed to get a shorter bolt, or longer bolt, sorry. I managed to find a couple of just random bushings that were off of I think a set of bar end mirrors that sort of perfectly sit. They're the right size. They need a tiny strip of rubber added to them to soften it up, but they hold the tank in place pretty well perfectly. Great news is I managed to get my oil return line and breather hose straight back on in place. I just had to modify the way they run a little bit with a little bit of my favourite method of persuasion. Probably why you didn't see that up on camera. Now, a little note that those of you who know stuff about dirt bikes are probably been having a laugh already. If not, you're already down in the comments. The part of the subframe that I drilled a hole through, turns out that's actually the oil tank. Something I didn't expect, didn't really pay enough attention to see. Obviously I've known my oil filler is up the top here, but I assume that was just a tube that ran down and through the stem so to be protected and safe. Didn't expect that this is actually an oil tank in the frame. The section that I drilled through, I thought that wouldn't actually have been part of the tank because it was further back, but it was actually sort of a vapor expansion area for that tank. So I did drill two big holes in my tank and fill the oil tank with metal shards. That's fine. There's a metal screen filter on the inlet to the engine. I'm going to take that off. I'm going to flush this tank right through and get that metal out of there. And I'm going to have to, where my bolt goes through to hold the tank on, I'm going to just take that off, put probably some plug washers on there, a nice big washer, and give it a little bit of extra sealant so it's nice and sealed and will stay there pretty well forever. And that'll be it. So things were learnt. This honestly, look, I'm happy about it now. I'm over the moon about it now that it's on there and it's fitted and it looks great. Obviously I've riveted down and bolted it down at the back. I'm really happy with the line. If I were doing this again, I would have put a little more research into the tank I used. Use something like, I'm told, an DRZ400 tank, where they were. They also had oil necks in the top of the stem, where the tank's wider at the top, so it fits over everything. You just don't have the fitment issues that I did. That is what it is. I am over the moon that is done now. So, next up, what we're going to do is, look, we need to refit the radiators. So I may end up getting to that, or alternatively, we may just start working on the seat. I've got the leather there, I've got my staple gun, I've got plenty of timber to make out the basic deck and start shaping it and things like that. I've just got to pick up some foam and that one will be good to go. Look, if you guys got any recommendations, maybe you just want to make fun of me for drilling through an oil tank like an idiot, drop it down in the comments below. Get subscribed to see the next one, should be popping up around this time next week. And thanks for watching, guys. I'll see you in the next one.